Amber Reap and Randy Pine. Amber is a senior research associate here at CUTR. She's worked at CUTR since 2000 on many research and transit training related grants. She's experienced in transit operations, planning, safety, security, emergency planning, technical assistance, and GIS systems, and is the co-chair of the National Public Transportation GIS Conference and the manager of the Florida Operations Network. Randy Pine has over 30 years experience in transit training, organizational development, and performance improvement programs. He has worked with over 100 transit agencies, nationally and internationally, with a focus on programs and practices that improve individual and organizational performance. He has a teaching career that includes 5 years as an adjunct professor at Ottawa University in Kansas City, and 3 years at the Metropolitan Community Colleges in Kansas City, where he taught business management, principles of supervision as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amber. I think is going to do the first part of the presentation.
Thank you, Jay. Worked on, and although Jay is moderating the session today, he's graciously agreed to do that. He will potentially be chiming in to answer any questions that you might have. To work on a TCRP project was a great pleasure for us. I just wanted to acknowledge for a moment the TCRP committee members who provided us guidance and feedback on this particular project, Synthesis 97, and wanted to provide just a little bit of feedback or information on a synthesis project and what it is and how it differs from a traditional research project. A synthesis project is usually just a collect and report information to synthesize it, useful information that is existing within the field or within the industry, current knowledge and practices that are available out there, and to present them in a compact format, and really just to be a centralized location for best information that is available. A TCRP synthesis report is not traditionally a research project in the usual sense. It's really just a barometer or a pulse of what's going on in the industry. So the first thing I wanted to just briefly discuss was the study methodology, to just kind of set the framework for how the study was set up. As I believe Stephanie and Jay mentioned, the full study itself is actually available through the download section or the handout section of Live Meeting, which is in the top right-hand corner of your screen and looks like 3 white pieces of paper. And today we're just going to be reviewing some of the highlights of the report, but the full report is available through Live Meeting today. So the study methodology, as far as the breakup of the report, we did a literature review, which basically identified all of the existing literature that was available within the industry. We also did a survey of transit agencies throughout the United States to find out what programs and policies they had with regard to safety, reward, and discipline. We followed up those surveys with telephone interviews, and then we further drilled down onto the details of a lot of those interviews and surveys by doing in-depth case studies, and we'll be sharing some of those results with you today. The study organization, basically we looked at public transportation agencies and authorities and broke out the survey into several sections. The first really dealt with the organization and its approach to safety, the organization and its policies related to safety discipline, and then the organization's policies related to safety incentive and reward programs. And you'll see the results of those as we move through the presentation today. But one of the things I wanted to find out from you guys is, does your transit agency have a safety reward program? And we'll keep the poll open for just a few seconds. All right, it looks like we actually have, across the board, we have 33% say yes, 33% say no, and 33% are not sure. So what I'm really hoping today is that you'll be able to have some takeaways from the webinar and find out what some other agencies are doing, some new innovative programs that might be easily implementable within your agency. So the survey and the interview focus. The survey and the follow-up interviews were organized to address the following topics. Essentially, the organization's commitment to safety, which of course I think we can agree is certainly an important topic. Rewards and disciplines within the agency. Engagement with the workforce, the employees. Partnerships or the involvement with organized labor. And as all of this relates to both operations and maintenance. And then the agency's safety standards and practices. And to briefly just summarize the results, and we're certainly going to go into these in more detail, but the overall was that we targeted transit agencies that had active safety program plans. We identified 30 agencies and received responses from 25 of the 30. And those 25 were geographically located to make up about 15 different states in Canada too. And they were multimodal. They operated in various environments as well. There was a good mix of urban, rural, suburban, and as I had mentioned, multimodal. So we really tried to hit the gamut to represent a good population within the public transportation industry. So the organization and safety was one of the first sections that we asked the agencies to provide us information on. And we basically just collected information on the system description and the type, the organization's mission statement and culture. And you'll actually find the details of this as we move forward and how important collecting this information was in developing the synthesis. Whether or not they had a system safety program plan, their employee involvement in the safety, how focused safey was with their new and existing employees, and any hazard identification programs that existed within the agencies. And so I guess we'll start with just sharing some of the survey findings. This was an electronic survey that was distributed to them, and these are some of the results. And one of our first questions was, what modes does your agency operate? We really wanted to make sure that we hit all of the modes, and I think you can see here that the majority of the folks had both fixed route and paratransit, with a few that had heavy and light rail, BRT, commuter rail, and even ferry. So we really tried to hit all of the components. Our next question was, does your organization have a formal mission statement? And much to our pleasant surprise, they all did, which was fantastic. And then the next question, which actually was very interesting, was whether or not safety was mentioned within the mission statement itself. And we actually learned that about 41% of the agencies did not have the statement of safety or the mission of safety in their mission statement itself. So the next section of the survey really dealt with the organization's policy related to safety discipline, whether or not the employee discipline practices of safety related to any kind of incidents, whether or not we could correlate any of that information, and the effectiveness of safety discipline programs, whether or not there was any information being collected within the agency on whether or not these programs were effective, customer safety complaints, and potential changes to policies. And again, to provide some specifics on the survey findings, one of our first questions was, can bus operators be discharged for safety-related accidents or incidents? And the majority of the folks indicated that they could. And does your organization have any data that would indicate how effective your discipline process has been in impacting safety? This was an important component. We really wanted to find out whether or not the agencies were collecting this information, synthesize it in the hopes that potentially in the future there could be some additional research done if that data was being collected. And we found that 36% of the agencies were collecting information. And the next component of the survey dealt with safety incidents and rewards. The organization's reward practices for safety, whether or not they had any. the participation of employees in policy development, and the involvement of non-operator work units outside of the whole operations realm, and the effectiveness of the safety and incentive reward programs if one was being operated within an agency. And again, just a few of the survey findings. One of the first questions we asked in this section was, does your organization offer individual or group reward or incentives for safety performance? And 85% of the folks said that they did, 14 didn't. And we'll be hearing a little bit more information about specifically what those programs were and how they operated within the agencies from Randy as soon as I complete my section. The next question we had asked is, are your incentive or reward programs ongoing? Are they time limited or both? There's actually some research that indicates that programs that are time limited tend to do a little bit better than ongoing programs, and that was something that we wanted to identify within our agencies, whether or not they were doing a mix of these ongoing or time limited programs, or whether or not they were just ongoing. It indicates actually that the majority of the programs, the incentive and reward programs that were being instituted within the agencies, were indeed ongoing. All right, and the next question was, does your organization have any data that would indicate how effective the incentive and reward programs are impacting safety? Again, this was one of those key components where with a synthesis project you'd want to collect the information and synthesize it so that in the hopes there could be additional research done with some of this data moving forward. And really what we identified was that 37% of the folks had identified or were at least collecting data about the effectiveness of their programs. And some of the challenges and opportunities. This was I believe, the last section of the survey that dealt with employee turnover rates, the impacts of diversity within the workforce on communication and training, and whether or not there were any kind of employee wellness programs, which we'll definitely get into a little bit further on in the presentation about how those types of programs can indeed affect safety. So one of the questions was, does your organization experience a high turnover rate of bus operators? And only 40% said yes. I know that differs depending on the type of agency you operate as well as where you are geographically. I know some agencies have much higher rates than others, but for our case study folks, 40% indicated that they did indeed have a high turnover rate. And does your organization experience communication and training problems related to diversity in the workforce, whether it be age, culture, or any types of other differences that might exist? And 80% indicated no. So we realized and synthesized that information through our report as well. And does your organization have any employee wellness programs to address issues like sleep patterns, over-the-counter medicines, and other issues that may impact operator performance? This is certainly a topic that's seen a lot of news recently, and we'll definitely see a lot of research moving forward. It's a topic that perhaps needs to have more research done moving forward, so we wanted to just collect this initial information, and we identified that 76% of the agencies that were surveyed did have some type of wellness program, and in the report, and you'll hear a little bit about it today, we found out some specifics about those programs, and I think you'll find out too that there are definitely some interesting and innovative programs being run out there that you might be able to take back with you. So before we review the case studies, what I wanted to do was ask you, our participants, if you have any questions. And while you're thinking of those questions, and you can use the Q&A drop-down manager to type in those questions. Stephanie just posted up the link on how to do that. So these are the instructions to ask questions if you have any at this point. And while you're typing in your questions, I also wanted to ask you, too, that if you have a wellness program or a reward and discipline program that you'd like to share with us today, you can, again, either type it in the Q&A drop-down manager, or you can press *8 on your keypad, and at a break, we will absolutely open that phone for you to tell us about your program. I think that both Jay and Randy would agree with me here that information sharing is one of the keys to any kind of synthesis project. So we want to hear from you as much as we're sharing information about what other agencies are doing right now. So please use the Q&A drop-down manager to either type in any questions that you might have or tell us about the programs that you're running. Perhaps you can share with us something that someone else can take back with them to their agency. So without any questions then, and if anybody is typing in their types of programs, which I hope you are, I think we'll move on to Randy's section. So I will introduce Randy Pine to you, who was our co-PI on the Synthesis 97 project. Randy?
Well, thanks, Amber. Good morning. It is morning where I am in the Midwest, so I can get away with saying that. We did 9 case studies, trying to get a representative sample of the different sizes and the diversity of the organizations, and draw some conclusions based on that. Even though we did 9, I think I'll cover a couple of here and then turn it over to one of the local agencies to talk about what they're doing there. I'm going to start with DART. DART, pretty good example of a multimodal large system in the Midwest, and in the synthesis paper we definitely noted that DART has a very strong organizational approach to safety and a very comprehensive system safety program plan to cover all of their modes of transportation. They do commuter rail, light rail, fixed route bus, and paratransit all together. One of the things I thought was pretty substantial with DART was that they recently had a great focus on frontline supervision and their involvement in safety. And so they actually did programs that would systematically involve supervisors and their interaction with operators to promote safety. They have budget problems like a lot of transit systems, and so the frequency, for example, of their meetings, their safety meetings between supervisors and operators is not quite as frequent as they'd like it to be based on budget cuts. But they actively involve the workforce in the development of their programs, and you know, there's an old saying that says that employees will have a tendency to maintain and support policies, programs, rules that they had a hand in developing, and will kind of automatically be tempted to resist things that are imposed upon them. So even though the approach probably took a little more time, because anytime you involve a number of people in developing those kind of things, it takes more time, I think they probably contributed to the overall success by doing so. They attempted to develop in their programs both collective programs, which would be group competition type things like this division versus this division. Competition is a pretty substantial form of motivation, and it's a low cost or no cost motivator that they used. There's some peer pressure involved in that. For example, if you know, you feel like you're involved in a group and your performance actually may bring down a group reward or contribute positively to the group reward, you might have just a little bit more active attention towards your emphasis on safety, and sometimes just that little active attention to performance improvement can translate into large numbers, and I think DART seemed to experience that. One of the things that you try to do with incentive programs, I think, often is try to quantify performance. Well, you know, on-time performance is something you can quantify. Lates, misses, unscheduled absence, and complaints, accidents, some of those are under control, some you can't control, obviously. But if you can quantify and measure a type of performance, then you have a pretty good chance of, you know, setting a standard and seeing whether you are meeting that standard or not. So DART did that, and for those who I guess there's a large percentage of the population that really don't want to participate in the group thing, or if some fellow performers in your group are not doing as well as you'd like, they also offered some individual incentives where it was based on your own performance. So it gave them kind of a multi-structured approach to motivating both within groups and individually. So DART did evaluate the effectiveness of their program and indicated that their vehicle collisions dropped nearly 10%. Passenger accidents dropped almost 60%, and they felt there was a significant improvement in passenger perception of safety. So I think they demonstrated that there are some elements of successful program that include involvement of frontline supervisors, competition between divisions or groups, as well as individual rewards. And I think they did a really nice job of also evaluating the results. I think at this point we'll skip ahead and do the Minnesota Valley Transit Authority. That's in the Twin Cities area, Minnesota. And one of the things that was interesting with this agency is that they contracted their service out, both fixed route and paratransit. So obviously sometimes when an agency subcontracts that to an operator, they lose a little bit of the direct control. However, MVTA seemed to have a great deal of success in working with their contractors to build in both rewards and penalties if safety performance measures were actually attained. So I think this is, and they felt like this was a great way to handle it. So not only could they be involved with the contractor directly through provisions in the contract, but they also worked with the contractor to actually get in and do some of the actual incentive programs and develop them themselves. So the operator felt like, he or she was being directed by both their immediate employer and by the contracting agency. They seem to think that the programs are very successful, and every time they renewed the contracts annually, they looked at the data that they had and they reestablished their safety standards based on recent data. I think the other thing that's probably important here is that they provided goal setting as part of their safety program, and it's a well-known motivational tool that if you set a goal and actually try to achieve it, and it's a realistic goal, it's achievable and so forth, then it actually does have some motivational effects. So I think they found a great deal of success with that. So we have a couple of examples here of a large multimodal with DART feeling like they had some success when they added both reward and incentive to the progressive disciplinary programs, which everybody seems to have, and also for those agencies that contract their operations out, paratransit and fixed route, that through the contract, through incentive and reward, as well as penalties for poor performance, that they actually had a positive motivational effect on the performance of the contractors. So there were two pretty good examples. At this point, let's switch to the Utah Transit Authority, and we have Michelle Wallace from that agency here to give us some information about that agency. Michelle?
Hello, everyone. Here at Utah Transit Authority, we're a multimodal company, and we have 5 different business units. Now, I work out of the Ogden one, which is the northernmost office, and in our business unit, we make safety, well, safety is our #1 priority, and then customer service, and then the operational issues. And so we believe that safety is for everyone in the company. And so every meeting starts out with a safety minute. We have a weekly safety bulletin. But we've also developed some incentive programs and some recognition programs so that everyone can feel involved in the safety, and not just operators, but also from the maintenance side as well. I don't know what else I can go into some very deep specifics on the programs, but I do know that as far as maintenance goes, one of the biggest programs is the road call mileage, which is a group reward. If they achieve their road call mileage goals, then it's a group reward. But they have individual recognitions. The drivers are recognized for safe driving through their accident-free awards. They have $500,000 awards, the $1 million awards, $2 million, $3 million, etc. All of our operators are trained with the TSI curriculum, and we have refresher training courses and supplemental training throughout their career. It's not just get trained and then you're done.
Thank you,
Randy,
Michelle.
anything else?
I think that's very thorough. Amber, how about you?
No, actually, we just wanted to have someone from the industry who participated in our study just provide a little bit more information about what was going on in their agency. UTA has a lot of programs, incentive programs and reward programs, and I'm sure that you guys will probably have some questions for her moving forward, but we thought it would be advantageous for you to hear from Michelle versus us, so she could be online to answer any specific questions that you might have about the programs they're running. They have a very comprehensive wellness program as well as their incentive and reward programs. So, Michelle, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the wellness programs.
Sure. Our wellness program is called PACE, and the biggest thing, the P in PACE stands for participation, because sometimes, people think, well, I can't get healthy because, I'll never succeed, but it's an individualized program. And our company is very interested in the wellness of their employees. We have every single business unit has a fully equipped gym that is open to the employees 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So even those that are on differing schedules have access to fitness with all of the machines and all of the equipment that you would find in a regular gym. We have biometric screening. We have a wellness consultant in each of the business units who is there to set up personal tracking and counseling, et cetera. And then there's they have challenges and programs. One of the ones they use is between Thanksgiving and New Year's, if you don't gain any weight over the holidays, then there's a little prize at the end, and there's some movie tickets. So there's always challenges and things that people can do to participate. We have a fruit basket that's out in the train room for the operators rather than some of the sugary snacks, and they also can earn money for their health savings account by participating in these PACE activities.
Thank you.
Excellent. And, I would add that the fact that you included the maintenance department in the incentive and reward programs is very progressive. Oftentimes, I think those in the maintenance department feel left out. And granted that the operators are probably the largest part of the operating budget, I think that's, very progressive to include the maintenance in a program as well. And it sounds like you've also, just like Amber talked about before, some of these programs are temporary, just like the one for Christmas. I think some research has shown that when you have temporary programs, what it does is it kind of brings a little bit of focus to the topic. But if it stays too long and it's not changed, then it kind of becomes part of the status quo. So having those programs that are focused and temporary tend to have, pretty good results like that.
I agree. In fact, before I was commissioned to work on this recognition and rewards program, they had a very static program in place, and instead of it becoming a reward, it was an expectation. Hey, I did this. Where's this? And there was no feeling of recognition for their performance, and I think that when you do give there, having long-term programs are also good, but you got to mix it up with some new and some short-term programs that are based on a specific goal.
It's been my experience, Michelle, I don't know if it's yours, but it's been my experience, some of those long-term programs like that tend to reward drivers, maintenance personnel who do well anyway. It's just kind of part of the status quo. Those short-term temporary incentive programs tend to affect the rest of us, the average employee just on the short term, and then once they go away, there may be a lag effect, but then you come in with a new program based on something else, and that marketing and so forth gives that little bit more active attention to what it is you're focusing on, and those seem to be successful. But that's been my experience as well, that those long-term static programs tend to reward people that do well anyway, which is a great morale builder, but it doesn't probably reduce accidents, because those, for example, aren't the people that are having accidents. So I think that just kind of maybe reinforces that idea a little bit at UTA. So thanks for that.
All right, I agree with that. And, and that was one of the reasons why we brought up one of our incentive programs is called the Rising Star, because we did recognize that we've got our high achievers, and then of course we've got our low achievers, which we're always focusing on, but it's those middle of the road, the ones that fly under the radar. And so someone can always improve their performance, and so it gives us a chance to recognize those middle of the road drivers that just come in and do their job and go home, and that they can still be recognized and rewarded for their contributions.
Excellent point. It seems like if you were to talk to some of your better performers, that they would, if they had a complaint, it would be that they're taken for granted. And so when you do give them some recognition or reward for their performance, I think it is a big morale booster. And it's been my experience, sometimes the poorest performers, getting management attention or recognition probably is a disincentive for them to do better. And so these programs where you have competition, where their fellow employees are more affected by their performance rather than management, who some of them feel, is the enemy, those kind of programs have a tendency, I think, to be a little more effective that way. And so, I appreciate your sharing what's going on at UTA. It kind of reinforces some of these beliefs. And I think, you have a successful agency there based on your active participation in all these programs. And so thank you.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to participate.
Do we have any questions or anything that we can respond to, Jay, or shall we just go right on into the conclusions?
Well, there is one question. Someone wanted you to, if you had a comment on the difference or pros and cons of team versus individual incentive programs.
Good. That's an excellent question. My experience is that team competition has a tendency to build in some motivators that are really low cost, and competition is a huge motivator for people's behavior. The downside to that is that the positive to that is that you are influenced, your performance is influenced by the people in your team. That can be a good thing and a bad thing. If there are people on the team that aren't performing up to par, then you feel like, cynically, why am I even doing this? Because other people are bringing me down. But there's peer pressure within that group to kind of perform, which is helpful. For those who feel like, okay, we're out of the competition because my fellow team members didn't do so well, the individual reward still allows them some motivation through the reward that they can get individually. So actually the ideal situation is to have as many weapons as you can to get to where you want to be. So group and individual is really the ideal way to go. The individual and I think time has a big difference too, because if your program's a year long, you're going to have a tendency to reward people who do well over the year. If the average person or below average performer automatically is disqualified in month one of a 12-month program, then they're not even being influenced by the program at all. And that, I think, is sometimes why these shorter-term programs have a tendency to be effective, because if I can just go a month with good performance, then I can be rewarded with something, and then I can start over again. So if I screw up in the first week, I've only got 3 more weeks where I'm not part of the program, but then I can start over again in the short term like that.
Okay, that was the only question we had at this point.
Okay. Can go in and talk, I guess, about the conclusions at this point then. Of the purpose of the synthesis paper was to just really kind of get an overview of what's going on in the industry and to see if there were any kind of obvious ties between what the agencies were doing and the results. Anytime you do a synthesis paper like this, it's not a scientifically controlled study, so you can't really say that if you do this, then you're going to get this result. And you can prove that objectively. And of course, when dollars are tight, it's always good to be able to show that you'll get some return on your investment in order to do a program that people think sometimes is an add-on. It isn't necessarily part of what works. However, those that have actually gone and been proactive and tried to do these programs and add some kind of reward or incentive in addition to progressive discipline have subjectively indicated that they've had some success and they think that programs are worthwhile. Now, as far as being able to prove it, it's very difficult to do, because if all you have, for example, is a progressive discipline program, how do you know if it's working or not? Because you don't have a control group to compare it against. And so you just keep on doing what you're doing because that's just part of the program. But I think experience has shown that if you can add some kind of incentive or reward to that, that performance actually will increase and costs will go down. So the next step on something like this is, if you believe that that to be true, you know, a research project, for example, that might show in a scientifically controlled study that there are positive results, and which kind of motivators tend to be more effective, I think would be a logical outcome of this. So more scientific research would be helpful in that. I think more of a study to understand whether the participative process works. I know some agencies have union shops where everything has to be negotiated. Some have right to work, so they have a little bit more flexibility. But I think, once again, anytime there's some kind of participation from those that are affected by the program, I think that helps. So further research, I think, would help substantiate some of the things that were brought forth in the synthesis paper. You know, my thanks to all those agencies that took the time to participate. Once again, I think Amber could probably give a little more information about how the Synthesis 97 might be available for download if anyone is interested in getting further details about how this synthesis paper was put together and so forth. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to you, Jay, unless there's any questions or anything to follow up on.
No, I think that's it. Are there any other questions of, you know, to use the type? And there really hasn't been. Amber is the final is, this is for anybody who would want to contact any of us. Here's our email addresses, and you know, for that we'd be more than willing to talk about this or share our experiences during this research. But it was a very interesting experience that you know, we enjoyed and got to meet some very progressive agencies around the country.
And I'll just add to that, as Jay had mentioned, that the final synthesis report is in the download section of Live Meeting, which is the 3 white pieces of paper icon on the top right-hand corner of your screen. You can access the whole entire report in PDF and review all 9 case studies and really kind of drill down into the specifics of what these agencies are doing with regard to their safety, reward, and discipline programs, how they're operating, how budget constraints are affecting them, and how they're kind of maneuvering around those budget constraints to implement as many programs as they can, cut some, add others, make them shorter, just lots of great information that's available. And if there are no other questions, I guess we will conclude the webinar for today and thank all of our participants. A recording of the webinar will be available online on the CUTR website. And again, we'd like to thank you and thank the folks from TCRP and the committee members.
Thanks, Amber and Jay.
Okay.
Hey, Amber.
Yes.
We do have one question in the Q&A manager before we go. It says, did you uncover any programs for promoting safety among volunteer van pool drivers for transit agency directly operated or purchased transportation van pool services?
Weren't part of the study, but that's an interesting area that definitely this could be added. We'll add that now, just kind of virtually. We'll add that to the possibilities for future research. But yeah, that's an interesting one. No, there wasn't part of the study, but it definitely could have been.
Okay, and before we end, we just wanted to let you be aware of our next webcast, which is September 6th. It's presented by Steve Reich, who's the director of the Transportation Program Evaluation and Economics Analysis Team. He'll be presenting on the Florida Metropolitan Planning Organization Advisory Council Transportation Revenue Study. And before you leave today, if you would like to provide us some feedback on today's webcast, and I believe that this presentation is up for, has not been approved, but is up for AICP credit. So if you could just take a minute and fill out today's evaluation. And again, we thank you for joining us today.